Hello and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Last month, we decided to try our hand at a pattern that came from a website giving instructions on how to make a realistic, reasonably authentic Egyptian costume. We wanted to try and make it something legit and wearable. And we ran into a few problems. So, this month, we've got them fixed. But before I do that big reveal, let me give you a little more historical background on Egyptian clothing, because there have been a few examples that have survived all of the millennia to the present day. There are a few of them that were found by William Flinders Petrie, the British archaeologist, and they are now in the collection of, I believe it's the University College London, and I can show you an example from that. There are others that are in the Turin Museum. They were found by Italian excavators. If you're in the United States, you can at least see a roll of linen cloth at the Houston Museum of Natural Science. And Houston also has a bead dress that probably had something underneath it, unless the lady that was wearing it was doing something a little exotic, but it's really interesting to go and see it. It dates from the Old Kingdom, and it's in that first big room that you can find yourself getting lost in when you go to the Houston Museum of Natural Science. But, and this is a topic that I'm always interested in learning more about. And I learned a few things that I'm sharing with you since, last episode. One of them is that there's been some debate over how the Egyptians accomplished the pleated look that you see on some of their garments. Some people thought it was knife pleating or using water and beating it in. A prevailing theory now is that they used beeswax and wooden molds, and so they impregnated the cloth with a little bit of beeswax and pressed it into that mold in order to get the pleated look. And the thinking is that pleating the fabric actually helped it to be a little bit cooler when you wear it. And one thing I can think of that sort of fits with that is if you've ever heard of a type of cloth called seersucker, and that is used in suits, and it's particularly favored here in the south of the United States, and it's woven in a mix of two different fabrics. The name seersucker actually comes from, it's a corruption of a Hindu word, and it has to do with the two types of fabrics that are involved. And that's one thing, that it has a particular texture to it, and it's very light and supposed to be not, going to make you swelter so bad, in the south, although if you're wearing, a suit in the middle of July or August in the deep south, I think you're going to swelter no matter what you do. But that's one example of something similar. What's interesting is that some of the surviving pieces of clothing that we have are actually three-piece. You have the main body and then two pieces that were sewn on as sleeves and created a V-neck, which I looked at that and said, oh, that's brilliant. That's one way to solve the problem that I have of how do you hem a round neck and get a decent hem that's going to lay flat. And I can show you an example of a tunic style shirt that I made over 15 years ago. It's hung in there quite well, but at one point in the collar, because I had to make the hem very thin in order to make that corner, and it hasn't held up well over time. And I'm telling you this because, yes, it's something that even me, with all the experience I have, I still, struggle with how to make that work. But I got some viewer feedback from folks that were very interested in wanting to make their own garments for ritual purposes, but don't know how to sew. And I want to tell you, for one, don't feel bad. Being able to sew by hand or with a machine, which I had to kind of teach myself how to do that. And, I still have to consult the instructions to, do things. If it's been a minute and I forgot, how to thread something, it's a lot harder. And for some things, I prefer sewing by hand. If it's, a short seam, it's faster for me to thread a needle and stitch it by hand than it is to set up the machine and check the bobbins and and the biggest time saver that a machine has is for long seams, like when you're making something like this. And so the garment I'm going to show you is a hybrid. But hand sewing has kind of fallen by the wayside. I think a couple of things contributed to that. My parents' generation, being the baby boomers, were the first ones to reject the idea that ironically is kind of coming back in the form of the trad wife. Well, at one point in time, that's what everybody was expected to do, was be able to, if you were a woman, you were expected to get married, raise kids, and to not only cook and clean, but also make, things for them, have some knowledge in, things like that. And so a lot of boomer women stopped doing that and didn't teach their kids that as a form of rebellion, if you will, saying, well, you don't have to be shackled with that, so I'm not going to teach you. You won't need that skill anymore. Well, funny thing with that. What if you want to do creative things? What if you want to make plushies, make costumes? So, and another thing that has made that a skill less in demand is, as we talked about last episode, the fact that clothes are so cheap. You have throwaway clothes now. I forget what the numbers are, but most people now, they buy something and they wear it a couple of times and then they, donate it or throw it away or whatever. So, what need is there to know how to sew anything, how to repair it? It's just not in demand anymore, unfortunately. But what's kind of turned the tide a little bit on that is the interest in making your own plushies, making your own costumes for cosplay. And that was actually what spurred me to figure out how to use a sewing machine, is in order to make a coat for Zex Marquise from Gundam Wing. And I'll show you a picture of my cosplay for that. So if you're interested in learning how to sew, the best thing that I can think of to kind of get started on that is look for tutorials that have to do with cosplay. And, there should be some folks teaching how to do sewing and things like that, for that purpose. And you could say that we're sort of cosplaying, except that we mean this seriously. We're not, trying to build a character, hopefully. We're just trying to make ritual garb. So, that's what I would suggest to anyone who is wanting to learn how to sew is, go down that rabbit hole and see what you find out. Now, another viewer said that they draw inspiration from modern Egyptian clothing. And that's actually a very good idea, because one of the pieces that I saw photographs of online, the initial caption said it was from the Tomb of Ka, and someone said, no, that's not from the Tomb of Ka, but I believe it is something from the Turin Museum, and I'll show a picture of it here. Funny thing about these two Egyptian garments is that they have the keyhole neck, but notice that they also have the straight sides, rather like what we were trying to do last time, and kind of felt like Charlie Brown from, The Great Pumpkin. But the basic design is very similar to couple of pieces that I will show you that were made in modern Egypt, and that I bought, one at a museum, one at a shop dedicated to, you know, Egyptian gifts, souvenirs, imports. And so I'll show you those. But as you can see, take the hanger out, it's basically one length with sort of a V-neck, and it has some has some stuff embroidered on and sewn along the edges to sort of reinforce the collar, but it's almost straight up and down. So that's one. It's all white. So great idea for ritual wear in and of itself. This is actually considered more of a Bedouin style, you know, with the black and with the gold. This is a man's Bedouin robe, is what it was labeled as when I bought it. And of course the pocket is something new. To my knowledge, there were no ancient garments with pockets, but you never know. They could find something tomorrow. But same idea, straight up and down. So obviously a man would be wearing this and probably have a tobe over his shoulders, or, you know, something that would cover over this and would give him sleeves. But this has been really handy to wear when it's summertime and 1,000,000 degrees outside and I need something, you know, light and comfortable. One thing that you'll notice, because both of them are essentially sleeveless, if you were to wear them properly in Egypt, you would have something over your shoulders, because in Egypt today it's considered rude for men and women both to wear something that doesn't cover your shoulders. So there was that one video with the guy that was talking about Bast and Sekhmet, so he actually went to the ancient site of Bubastis, and I noticed he was wearing a sleeveless shirt with an Egyptian pattern on it, and he was wearing a bead collar, and he might as well have taken a marker and written tourist on his forehead, because the sleeveless shirt is something that, you know, most native Egyptians wouldn't be, you know, running around wearing. So just one little thing I had to point out there. But with that in mind, I went back to my sewing project using the linen look-alike cotton. So here is the finished ritual robe, which, again, I cut about 9 inches off of either side, just straight down, so that it would not be quite so wide, but it would still go straight up and down. Hemmed the sides, have armholes that are about that big. They don't need to be really big. What I figured out, in fact, is that the longer they are, the more people are going to see, you know, the sides, and you don't want to be showing off side boob unless you're doing one of those rituals. So, and I reinforced the collar a little bit in the front. So, there you have it. What I also did was I took that extra material that I had cut off and used that to make a sash. So it will be matching, it will be the same material, so it'll all look like it fits. So let's try it on and see how it looks. And here we go. I'm showing this to you without any extra add-ons, just so you can see how it works. We've got sleeves, basically, that come to about the elbow. And for the record, white is not a slimming color on anybody. Poor ancient Egyptians, but somehow they managed to rock it without without anybody being the wiser. But it does do a decent job of giving you that effect. No, it's not pleated, but it's certainly very comfortable. Let's see how it looks with a little bit of accessorizing. Ta-da! And of course, bead collars like this are all over the internet. You can find them for usually starting around $30 US and going up. It's a little more if you want the set with the bead belt. But here you go. So I think we were able to successfully establish that if you want to make this pattern work, you're going to have to make sure that you trim some off, because standard fabric sizes today are a little bit wider than what you would have started with, if you were making this pattern back in the day. One other thing that I highly recommend if you want to try making your own ritual garb or anything else like that, look for patterns. And there are so many of them that are out there. McCall's Simplicity and Butterick is another old pattern maker. And yeah, you look at the illustrations and some of them look straight out of the 70s, but they also have some more modern things. They have knockoff steampunk, they have knockoff Game of Thrones, it looked like, especially if you look in Simplicity's costume settings. Their patterns, they also have some that are meant for nativities, but you have some, robes that could very easily be adapted for, general pagan wear. There's also a caftan pattern that it's not a costume, but you could also use that. And the wonderful thing about patterns is it's basically instructions, and if you get the physical pattern, you've got paper and you can just lay it out, cut your pieces. And I used a pattern and adapted it in order to make the shed belly style coat for Zex Marquise, and I would not have known how to do it had it not been for that pattern. So if you're trying your hand at it and you need some help, those are a great starting point once you have an idea of how to sew. Just get yourself a pattern. And they do have versions online that you can download as PDFs. And that's one way that you can get started and kind of get a little bit of an assist if there's nobody in your family or your circle of friends who can actually give you hands-on help with it. Speaking of, I invite you to check out Patreon. I've got some exclusives this month talking about my trip to go and see Dr. Zahi Hawass speak. He's doing a tour around the United States, and had some interesting things that he said, some interesting observations that I had about that, and I'll tell you more about that on Patreon. And since we're here, we have to give a happy dance in Garb. Gotta do the kitsch. It's one of those things, you just have to do it. But thank you for all of my super people who give super stickers to this channel. Thank you so much. You support the things that we do, and we love you for it. Next month, of course, we will be celebrating the Kemetic New Year, and so if you haven't hit subscribe already, make sure you do that so that you can get notifications, because we're going to be doing live streams through the days on the year, and on Opet Ronpet on Egyptian New Year. And later on we'll be possibly doing some shorts or some live streams from other locations, so we'll have to see how that goes. And of course, if you tune in to our live stream services, we finally have a booklet that you can order, and it gives you the rituals that we do, so you can follow along. There's some prayers in there. There's also the ritual for the decade, which is the end of every Egyptian week. It was a 10-day week, that's why they call it a decade. That's in here. Now, it is not available on Amazon. It's only available through the link that takes you to Lulu. So I'll include that in the description. It's in the description when we do our live stream services, and it's also going to be on my website as well. So look for that. It's one way that you can support what we're doing with the Kemetic reform, which we're going to get it incorporated. We're working on that process. There's some things that have to come together, but this is a piece of it. This is our ritual that we do every week when we do a live stream. And, of course, I want to remind you, if you didn't catch last month, I talked about my novels. These are science fiction. They're not historical fiction, although one day I'm going to do some of those. But if you want an idea of what my writing style is like, how I work with characters, then I invite you, and certainly if you have friends that are not pagan but would be interested in science fiction, fantasy. If you watch anime and there are some anime storylines that you like, then you'll probably enjoy this, because that kind of style does influence what I do a little bit. Of course, I mentioned earlier doing the cosplaying and things like that. So, all part of that continuum. But this is my original story. You have the first novel, Worlds Away from Here. That is the first of the Meta Shifters novels. And then you have 3 more at this point. I'm working on writing novel number 5 as we speak. So check those out. The links are in the description. And as always, thank you for tuning in and supporting us, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more information if you decide to try making your own ritual garb. And we'll delve into some other topics in the coming months. For the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon wishing you serenity. Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.
Cannot believe what I'm seeing!